Welcome, everyone, to Theo Thoughts.
How's it going? I'm Jordan Peternell.
I'm Judson Page. And for those of you listening and now also watching, this is the first time that we are incorporating video into our podcast. So you can see the wonderful room, the peace lily that we talk about all the time.
The painting upon the wall behind Judd.
Yeah. But we're really excited to bring this new way of connecting to the conversation. Feel like you're right in the room with us. So,
Yeah, and
yeah.
you get to maybe see a little bit more of us, our faces,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, we realize we've shown the people that we have on the podcast, Dr. Munshaw, Callie, but some of you, I guess, have also never seen our faces.
Yeah.
So anyway,
So now if you catch us walking across campus, you would most
yeah,
likely know who Judd is, maybe not me, but if you see us walking across campus, you can definitely look at us
yeah.
and approach us if you feel like it.
hmm
So, anywho,
Well, anyway, so Jordan, what are we talking about this morning?
we are talking about the idea of when Jesus talks about don't cast your pearls before swine.
Yeah.
Healthy evangelism, unhealthy evangelism, what it means to evangelize in the
hmm
right way, and how people don't appreciate whenever
Yeah.
you're trying to do something.
Yeah,
So I don't know.
for
What do you
sure.
think about it?
Well, I know especially people are familiar with like televangelism
Of course.
of like the big put on a show, thousands and thousands of people with studio productions inside a giant mega church. And that already just televangelist, that already has a negative connotation. We don't want to have evangelism associated with a negative thing. But in today's world, there's some people that are really pushy and then also flip it around in today's day and age. It feels so unnatural to go up and talk to somebody that you don't know, as opposed to, back when, or even just, I think of what Greenville was like, around my mom's time here, of just like everybody knew each other. You could just walk up to anybody and everything. It was a lot easier to evangelize
Of
because
course.
people were more comfortable with people they didn't know.
Yeah. And in a society where we're trying to get rid of the stereotypes, it seems
Yeah,
like there's a stereotype that fits everything and that everybody listens to.
right.
Right? And evangelism now, especially televangelism, is something that is frowned down upon and gets
hmm
made fun of for people who steal money or
Yeah,
are just into it for their own personal gain. And I don't think that's the way it's supposed to be.
right.
Of course, it's not.
hmm So, but of course, this scripture that we talked about, the don't cast, pearls before swine. Swine, those that don't know, like pigs, or basically don't take a good thing and throw it in the garbage.
Yeah,
But it's not to say people can take that wrong, just like, oh, so everybody who's not Christian is swine. No, that's not the case. It's more talking about when you are trying to, like, imagine, I know I have, like, when you're talking to somebody and you're trying to say something and then just always interrupting or always just saying no or nuh-uh. I would say like the nuh-uh type of speech, where you are trying to explain something and no matter what you say, it's always no or nuh-uh, or can't possibly be. It's just the completely resistant
of
kind of
course.
deal.
I think it has to do more with the mentality than the person.
Yeah.
I think you put yourself in the swine position, not that
hmm
you literally are swine. And
Right.
please understand that this is an analogy, and that we're not actually calling people pigs for not agreeing or maybe for
Right.
poking fun at like what we believe.
Yeah.
But say you get into an argument and it's intense,
hmm
and you are standing firm in what you believe, and they disagree simply because it's what you believe.
Right.
Well, your thing that is good that you are then throwing in front of the garbage, something they can't understand, is your pearls. And it could be an argument, it could be a moral, it can be
Yeah.
literally anything that you believe and set your faith in that they don't accept because of your faith.
Right. Yeah. And it's crazy just to think about in today's world, the way that we approach things. Like, it is so easy for people just to get burnt up, like angry so quickly. There's another scripture that I try and remind myself of, 2 Timothy 2:23. Do not get in foolish and stupid arguments that only lead to fights. And I think of kind of mixing with that. Like, also, we should never approach, throwing pearls at somebody who sometimes, didn't ask.
Yeah.
Because like I think the best way like to healthily, I don't know, mom, you can correct me later, to healthily evangelize is, relationship. So building relationship with person and not, finding somebody across the street, getting your slingshot ready and like and saying, "You
John
need Jesus."
3:16. Yeah. John
Yeah.
3:16.
Yeah, that's not gonna always be the most effective method. So we don't need to just throw our pearls at every single person that walks by. Not to say don't talk to people about Jesus, but understand and learn how to do it effectively and in a healthy way.
You're absolutely right. And I think people often forget, especially I would say more traditional churchgoers, the
Mm,
ones that are typically stereotyped as the racists or the, whatever other label you want to put on them. They fit into one like category of person.
mm,
So they always dress up nice, or the ones who like look down on people with tattoos, or the ones who
right.
like want you to dress proper or always have close cropped hair, you know.
Mhm.
Whatever else, you know what I mean, though, like,
Yeah.
always dress up, look nice, keep up an appearance, basically,
Right, right.
but, I mean, the Lord, even Jesus, like, we talk about the chosen all the time, and I think that in his choice, and the people he picked for his disciples, he meant to find people of all shapes and sizes,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And you look at Christian artists nowadays, some people who are so down to earth and crazy about the Lord, people who make a huge difference. They're tatted from head to toe, got
Yeah.
nose rings and ear gauges. I think of the guy from Korn.
Mm.
I think of like what's his name? Do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah, it's a heavy metal band.
Yeah, I've
Anyway,
I've heard of I've heard of the band, but I don't know
it's
the
like
names.
screamo rap. I would never listen to it. I think it's sludge, but he's made a huge difference. But like Brandon Lake is another one.
Okay, yeah.
Walks out there, tatted arms
Right,
down to his wrists,
right.
uh, uh, cornrows, and like
Yeah.
anyway, it's just things that people wouldn't assume. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah, basically, I mean, it is kind of a stereotype game, on both sides of, snobby Christians that think they know better and that I need saving, and then also flipping it around of just like, "No, I know everything about, the universe, and I don't want, new relationship." And so it's a both and that also it makes me think, brings me to a question. Uh How in the way that we approach evangelism, how do Christians balance the call to evangelize with respecting other people's beliefs and cultures?
That's tough because there's such a push to be like, "I'm right." You know what I mean? I'm
Mhm.
guilty of it.
Yeah.
Like, everybody wants to be correct,
Mhm.
and, I'd be lying if I say sometimes I don't do research to try to win the battle
Mm.
instead of persuade, and you
Right.
never wanna do that. I've
Mm.
learned, through wisdom, you never wanna go in just trying to prove that you're right, you wanna persuade your way.
Yeah.
So I think you have to go in with some sort of respect to their culture and their background. Otherwise, you're never going to be able to hit home. And if
Right.
you automatically plant your feet on the other side of that wall, the only thing that you're going to see is shots fired over both. Cannonballs from
Yeah.
each other's theories or
Mhm.
points or whatever you may have. But I think it's super important to understand their background because if you don't, and respect their background because if you don't, then there's no way you're going to get to them and you're shutting them off
Right.
to what you want to say.
Yeah. I mean, it's really hard, especially we have an amazing opportunity to live in a place where we can safely and freely believe what we want to believe. But in that means that around us there are many people, even on this campus, there's many people that think differently, that come from a different place. Like literally, Greenville campus is like a small world. So many international students, which is really great for exposure and understanding where different people come from, how they were raised differently, and it's a great thing. And but it can be really hard, and can almost feel like having to tiptoe because especially with part of today's culture of our generation of this, cancel culture, if you even if you come off just a little too strong or slip up a word,
Yeah.
that can send you away like that.
Yeah.
And it's the trying to find that balance of, okay, how do I try and introduce Jesus to them in a healthy, friendly way whilst respecting where they came from, how they were raised, and not pushing myself or allowing them to push me over the edge? Because sometimes people also are just firm and they're just, no, I don't, I'm fine with where I'm at. And to be like, okay,
Yeah,
not right now then.
for sure. For sure. I like I said, I think it's super important. But I think on the other side of that, I think it's important to realize that at some points we have to be unapologetic apologetics.
Yes.
We are not going to change the way we think or like butter it up for people.
Right. I mean, Jesus, he didn't butter things up.
Absolutely not.
He said it as is. And I think that there's a nice balance, or sometimes we see different things, cuz I mean, Jesus, the lion and the lamb, we see him, speak with the confidence of a lion, like, roaring of, this is what it is. It's not this way, it is this way. Then we also see the lamb of, I think of times where he would go up to somebody and he would just say, you are loved, go and sin no more.
Yeah.
And that was it. Like, not condemning, not shoving things down their throat, not listing out every single sin they ever did to make them feel bad or tell them every good thing he's done to make people think that he's so much better. Like, he even said, I don't need to glorify myself right now. And so we have to find the balance between the lion and the lamb. And I think more often our fellow Christians kind of lean more towards in the lion side.
You're
And
right.
sometimes we need to embrace the fact that Jesus sat down and broke bread with every type of person without condemning them every time they did something.
You're right. Yeah, and I think a huge and important part of evangelizing or even getting there first is realizing who you are, like who you really are,
Mhm.
um, and knowing your stuff.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, for
So
sure.
if you go in with empty facts or empty evangelism because you don't necessarily know what you're talking about,
Mhm.
I'm not saying you need to go in with like a battle strategy, right?
Right.
But I forget who says it. It's a New Testament author. It says, always be ready to defend your faith.
Yeah.
So that means you got to be ready to defend it, but that also means you got to be ready to take some heat for it. You
Yeah.
know, they say that lions don't lose sleep over the opinions of sheep. That's
Mm.
what they say. I know we use the lion and the lamb,
Yeah.
but I'll flip it around, right?
Yeah.
We're the lions, and the sheep are the people with the negative opinions toward what we believe.
Right.
So not only do you need to be able to be gentle and
Mhm.
loving like you're
Yeah.
supposed to, but in times you got to be a lion and
Yeah, I
you got to
mean,
be able to stand up for what you believe in.
yeah, like putting on the full armor of God, like being prepared, because it's also like a spiritual preparedness for things, because they're like, especially a lot of people when they first enter into relationship with Christ, they're lit with this awesome fire, which is amazing to go. I mean, we see it in Paul, like after he was blind, and then Saul became blind, and then had the encounter with Jesus, became unblind, and then he just went and just started preaching out. Even Paul, he went and he talked with some of the disciples and elders, and he learned, because when, like, there's a reason that a general is a general, because he has the experience, he has the knowledge, he prepares himself. I mean, not to, yeah, it is kind of like war sometimes. It is war, because we're fighting this battle against evil and the devil and principalities. We're not fighting the people. We're fighting the evil thoughts. We're fighting because that
With the Theo thoughts.
yeah,
Yeah.
theo thoughts.
Anyway,
Uh but yeah, I mean that verse of, it's not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities. And so as we go in, like, I think of when Jesus was tempted by Satan for 40 days. Jesus, of course, being God, knew all of the scriptures, but Satan knew scriptures too.
yeah.
There are people in this world that know scriptures that aren't Christian, that also will use that to try and, slip people up. So it is important to be, that's one of the reasons why we're supposed to be, decently read in the word, so that we know God's words, so that way we cannot be misled when someone, even a fellow Christian, will try and, twist the words around.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree that you have to be ready, you know?
Yeah.
You have to be able to put on the full armor of God. You have to be able to defend what you believe in. But the offensive is just as important.
Yeah.
I
100%.
know I've talked to my dad and I've talked to other people about how whenever you're not in a season of suffering, and shout out to
Mhm.
Callie last week, we talked all about suffering. It was great. Go watch it
Yep.
anyway, or listen to it. Just listen to it. You can't watch it right now. This is
Yeah.
the first one you can watch, so welcome. But where was I? Oh yeah, you got to be able to go on the offensive.
Mhm.
So Judd, what do you think it looks like and I guess we can go through different levels,
Yeah.
but say that there's like a baby Christian first time in church.
Mhm.
How do you go up and evangelize with them? And then I'll give you a couple scenarios of
Yeah,
like
yeah.
how would they would react to
Okay.
what you say.
Yeah. Okay, so fresh person shows up to church, giving it a try. Honestly, the first thing I think is as soon as they walk in the door, be a friendly face so that they don't feel like they're alone.
Yeah.
So being somebody that's right there alongside them, because nobody wants to go to a new place and then sit alone in the back of a room, and because then there's no relationship. Part of the church is a community. It's people. The church is the people. And so as the church, part of our job is to help usher in new people and new faces, and being that first smile, because like first impressions are also everything. Like if I go into a new place and nobody, says hi, or if I say hi and, it's not reciprocated, I'm gonna be like, "Oh, tough room."
Yeah.
And then it's gonna start to feel uncomfortable. So I think one of the most important things is as soon as there's a new face, being then that first friend that will be like, "Hi, I'm Judd. Nice to meet you, tell me about yourself. Let's go sit, let me introduce you to some other people." I think honestly that right there is one of the most important start offs,
You're
I'd
right.
say.
And honestly, I think it's kind of where the rubber meets the road
Yeah.
because that's really whenever you find out who's willing to make their faith into action. You know, they say faith
Right.
without works is dead, right?
Yeah.
Well, you can have your own personal faith, but if you don't show that off in the things that you're talking about, hospitality and love and genuineness
Mhm.
to people who you don't know their background,
Right.
they can walk into church in rags,
Mhm.
they can walk into church in, I don't know, like a pinstripe suit in a Lamborghini, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But they're at church. And typically, if it's a first time thing, the Lord brings them there for a reason. And I don't know
Right.
if it's our job yet to
Mhm.
find out what that reason is, but I don't know if there's ever been a person who isn't hurting.
Right. For sure.
Everybody has their battle. So I definitely agree. So this person comes in,
Yeah.
Judd. My next question to
Yeah.
you is if they just say, like, hey, my name is Ricardo. Yeah, my name is Ricardo.
Ricardo.
I was raised Catholic and I wanted to try out a Protestant church, and here we are at Greenville First Christian Church.
All
Okay,
right.
or let's we'll do the Free Methodist Church. That's where you go. So Greenville Free Methodist Church. He's like, I just wanted to try it out, but I'm not too serious about it. So what do you do?
Well, first, I, you know, as long as I'm not pushing too much, I might, ask some of the reasons behind it. Like, is there any specific, reason behind wanting to give this a try? Or I might also ask him, what church did you come from beforehand? Like if it was one in town, or if it was, they're completely from other side of the country. I don't know where Ricardo was from.
Yeah,
I want to figure that out. But if it were specifically at Greenville Free Methodist Church has a lot of resources, which is really great. I think one of the best places to feel comfortable, because it's a little bit bigger church. I enjoy, like, my church is a little bit smaller. I kind of enjoy a smaller setting, feels more just,
personal.
yeah. But anyway, besides the point, I would say dialogue is the best thing, because when I when I go somewhere, like also when I am learning from somebody, I yes, I learn sitting and listening, like, in the back, but I also learn a lot from talking to, you know, whoever's doing more of the talking. Basically dialogue like this, what you and I are doing right here. This is where I feel like this is where you said where the rubber meets the road, where we get the meat and potatoes of things.
Yeah.
And I would encourage, there are different Sunday school classes where we talk about this. Is there a specific topic or maybe thing about the Catholic Church that you weren't maybe so certain about, that maybe you're looking to see if a Protestant church can answer, a Protestant pastor? Uh, Slightly related, this kind of scenario makes me think about scenario that happened at my church. This was many years ago. My late grandfather, he had came to visit us for a time, and so he came to church with us, and he's always wonderful presence at our church. And there was a man who came in. There's Just continue to say Ricardo. There's a man who came in the back, and during our pastor's sermon, he stood up and said, "Pastor, I have a question." And I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was a deep question to stand up and say it in the middle of a sermon. So the pastor, knowing my grandfather, he pointed over to him and he said, "Rich," as his name Richard. And so my papa stood up and started to talk to him, but then invited to talk with him out in the lobby. And he talked with him for the rest of the sermon. And when my me and my parents came out, they were sitting and talking. And my pop always had a smile on his face, and so they were laughing and talking with each other towards the end. And it was just a really amazing thing, because that is, like, neither my papa never knew him, and they didn't have a chance to say hi before church. But just with the friendly demeanor and being willing to listen, he was able to, you know, talk with this Ricardo in a healthy, friendly way. And I so admire that. Even just the way that he was, just being that friendly face of always saying hi and always being willing to listen to somebody. And yeah. So anyway, to go back to more of your question, honestly, uh, try and find a way where they can have dialogue with people, whether that's in a Sunday school class or before or after church, even with the pastor or other members of the church. But using the resources to get them engaged with other people in spiritual dialogue, I think, is a really great way to encourage somebody to stick around for a bit longer.
You're right. And those are all really, really good answers. I agree with you 100%. I think that there's an important distinction whenever a guest comes in,
Yeah.
um, between somebody who like might be, in the analogy, swine,
Mm,
and then someone who you would refer to as the least of these.
right.
Whenever I was little, a church is a place of refuge,
Yeah.
right? So whenever I was little, all the time, we lived in a church, or we went to a church that was kind of in like a slummy area,
Okay.
and all the time
Yeah.
we would have people who were totally broken, sick, like I
Hmm.
said, dressed in rags coming in. And my dad, who's a pastor, for those of you who are wondering, would take him in, let him sit on like the furniture in his office, like
Hmm.
give them food, like buy them lunch, like all these things. And I never really got it. And I think like it's human. I'm not snobby, but I think it's human to be like, like we live such a different lifestyle than them. But
Right.
then, and we have an episode on the least of these, but um, it's very humbling, and you definitely can feel that you're doing the right thing whenever you show that love to them.
Yeah.
And there's a distinguishing factor between those people who really just are going to church because they need help, they need love, they need Jesus,
Right.
versus the
Right.
people who are naysayers. And those
Mm,
naysayers, those people who go to church literally just to find a hole in the system. And there are people that will always do that. People
yeah.
who will go just to cause a ruckus. And like, for example, okay, so somebody who would go into a church to make up a rumor about the pastor so
Mm,
that he can, have an investigation done under him within the church board. And then eventually, like, the smoke might go away. It might not go away. Like, we
right.
had to leave our church in Pennsylvania because something went down.
Mm,
And the other side of that would be somebody who came in who was freshly out of an addict's home. I forget what that's called, like a halfway house or something.
I don't know.
But you know what I'm talking about,
Yes,
like,
I know
whenever
what you're
someone
talking about.
struggles and they
Yeah.
have to go to a place for recovery, but they have powerful, powerful testimonies,
Mhm.
and there's a huge difference depending on how you react to those people, so I think it's
Right.
important, and I love your answers for Ricardo.
Yeah. I got some other questions. So we've been talking about, in the physical confines of inside the church, but as a church community, how are some ways that, or what are some ways that churches can better connect with their community? Because some churches, there'll be, five churches in a town, but nobody ever knows because the churches stick to themselves.
Yeah.
So, what would then be some effective ways to reach a lot of Ricardos without them ever even, before they even have a chance to walk in the building?
Yeah. So, I think, obviously, like a church soup kitchen or, well, what's it called whenever, like typically, it's in the basement of a church. I'm just tired. I'm having a brain fart, but, like, typically, it's in the basement of a church, and, they have a food pantry. Food pantry is another
Yeah.
huge one. The church I go to has a basketball league,
Oh, yeah,
and
that's
at
good.
some point this year, I admittedly was like, "Well, are we letting people play who, like, don't go to the church?" As I was kind of confused by that because we're letting anybody in because this thing can get huge, and then the guy who runs it was like, "Yeah, that's kinda the point."
Yeah.
So we're trying to reach people in the community. I was like, "Yeah,
Right.
that makes a whole lot of sense
Yeah.
now, and I understand it, and I advocate for it."
Right. Yeah.
Mission trips are another really, really good one.
Mhm.
Uh, Online ministries, but done in the right way.
Yeah, that was honestly, that was one of, I think, the one of the good things that was able to come from COVID was all of these churches now do live streams,
Yep.
which never even thought about doing it before, and now reach so many more people, which I think is a great example of God using, hard times to bring forth something prosperous. And, I think of even my little small church, you know, w- being able to live stream, I can watch my services from home. I mean, well, I can watch my home services from here
Yeah.
whenever I want, which has been a really great thing. But I think it's so important, and you're hitting the nail on the head there with uh, the engagement in the community is so important. Like we do a trunk or treat, like trunk full of
Oh,
treats.
yeah.
So being a safe place where kids and families can come, and we have a family section where drop your kids off in this room, and we'll watch them, we'll play games, and you can relax for a minute. But I think that has so much more power than people realize. Like, I think we had talked about it in our first episode, talking about how Amy Grant came out with secular music to bring people in to her Christian music, and the same way of like having a softball league where anybody can join. It's hosted at churches, and then after the game, then you go inside and you get food or something like that.
Yeah.
But there are really amazing ways that churches can partner with the community and partner with each other to do a lot of really great things that don't immediately just say, come and find Jesus, but instead it's like, come and have some food, meet some people, talk with some people, find out about our programs. And I honestly think that those are some of the best ways to help get a Ricardo in the door.
You're right. Yeah, church outreach is something that's super important
Mhm.
because you can miss well, I'll say this, church outreach is super important, but personal outreach is just as important.
Right, for sure.
Like we are called to be fishers of men, and that is definitely the idea at the head of those church outreach
Yeah,
programs are thinking. But like, if you don't invite your neighbor to church and you're pretty good friends with them, what the heck are you doing, dude?
yeah.
Like, there's a song by Casting Crowns it's called "Here I Go Again," and
Mm,
it's an idea of like, "Here I go again." I'm talking about the rain and like mumbling over things
yeah,
just to get through a conversation,
yeah,
things that won't live past today. And I keep dancing around the truth that I want to like tell this person, and then
right.
I want to share with them because you never know. Like this might be my last chance to tell them that Jesus loves them, and you never know.
For real. Yeah, but that's crazy because when we become friends with people, we invite them to do things. We invite them over to our houses, we go out for dinner, we go out to hang out, and to think that why wouldn't I invite them somewhere? I remember when I was younger, uh, one of my friends in my neighborhood, couple houses down. I was pretty close with him, and I was just like, "Hey, you want to continue having fun, but over at youth group?" And he was
Yeah.
just like, "Yeah." And so it's like it's continuing on the thing. And I didn't say, "Hey, you need more Jesus. Come with me to youth group."
Yeah.
But I was just like, "Hey, let's keep the good times rolling." And it was a great way to, start introducing him to more church. And he came to youth group with me like every Wednesday for years, and it was really amazing.
You're right. And I would say as a concession that your individual evangelism can be unique to you.
Right, for sure.
I think that I'll use like an analogy of cancer. Like I want my evangelism to be like a cancer that spreads throughout my influence,
Yeah.
right? That doesn't mean that my theology or the way that I think is fluid because it's not. It is like standing firm, but that
Right.
doesn't mean that I can't reach people in a plethora of different ways. And if
Yeah.
you're not doing that, you're not using your works for His kingdom. Like
Mhm.
that's one of the things we're called to do.
Right.
Faith is something that's super duper important. If we've talked about anything on
100%.
this podcast, it's been faith.
Yeah.
But faith is proved to the Lord through our works. So if you're not going to people and like, if I'm really, really good friends with you and you see that I'm a Christian and you choose to look past that and just be like, yeah, dad, like I don't really care. I'm not about that life. I'm not gonna say, are you really my friend? But like we're gonna get into that conversation all the time.
Yeah,
And eventually I'm gonna get you.
honestly makes me think about this, when we first started just talking in the basement about different theology things. I thought, we could do something with this. We might be able to, you know, do some kind of outreach and talk more about this stuff in a way that we can talk to other people, without leaving this room, which of course we still talk to people outside of this room,
Yeah,
but in the way that this is a way that we can healthily evangelize to a lot of people in with a lot of different topics, and connect in a different way that's safe and inviting. And I think that it's I was talking to the speaker from last week at Vespers. She is on one of the athletic teams here, and
tennis, right?
gymnastics.
Oh,
Sorry,
I
not
think.
here,
Oh,
Vespers.
yeah, I got you. Yeah,
Anyway, uh, but anyway, was talking with her afterwards, and her whole team came to see her speak at Vespers, and we were talking at small group the next week, and I was talking with her. You She was talking about like responsibility, and because we were asking her, why'd you think to speak? What kind of led you to speaking? And she's saying felt like, I was kind of supposed to, like it was a responsibility. And I built up more on that. It was just like, yeah, with Greenville, there's a lot of people that come to Greenville, just to play sports, and the Christian part of the university, they could not care less about. And so when in the circles that we are in, we have a responsibility to be that one that kind of stands out in that way. And she got her whole team to come and listen to her speak, and then parts members of her team came up to her afterwards to talk to her more about it and ask her questions. Like, "See, this is what I'm talking about. God has, given us these gifts of speaking or of knowledge of wisdom, and we are responsible not to cover that candle with a basket, but to let it shine on a hilltop
yeah,
where it can be seen by everyone." Because I mean, the Great Commission,
of
we
course.
we have a responsibility.
You're right, and like the opposite of that is whenever you do have that tremendous responsibility, that responsibility is good, but could also be potentially bad for you. If you don't hold up the standard of what a Christian is supposed to be, and you're not living the life that you're supposed to, you can put a bad taste in the mouth of people. That's why people think that Christians are hypocrites. That's
Yeah.
why that stereotype exists.
Mhm.
And I mean, like the Bible talks time and again about how, like, those of you who are teachers will be judged more harshly because we're supposed to be the ones going out to fish, like fishers of men, reaching out
Yeah.
into the community. You're supposed to be that, like, give off that loving aura. But if you find out that the same person who is saying, like, hey, well, I understand you came from a life of of drugs and of partying and all those things. So that's okay. We're not going to do that anymore. Like we
Right.
now are Jesus followers. You're going to
Mhm.
help me be a fisher of men. We're going to share our story together. That's going to be it. But then like the guy goes and gets crap faced at the bar, like behind everyone's back. Yeah, there's a storm coming for that guy, and you got
Yeah.
to make sure that you're not that person.
Yeah.
Practice what you preach.
With great power comes great
Spider
responsibility.
Man.
But I mean, yeah, for real. Like as because when we carry Christ like a seal upon our arm, if we, go out of our way to, taint that and make it less than what it is or turn it into something, hateful and judgmental, then we're sullying the name of Christ. We're sullying Christian. I mean, that's little Christ. And it's so, not to put a whole lot of pressure, but I mean, it is an it is an honor to, be made in God's image and to be chosen by him to do his works, and like to receive, a spiritual gift from God is a responsibility. So like I'm very passionate about music. I play a lot of music. I play trumpet, guitar, piano, other stuff. And but I make sure that, okay, God, you've given me this gift. I have responsibility to use this gift to glorify you. So I take that gift of music and I give that back to him. I play guitar on worship teams, and to help create a safe space for others to worship. And so I've taken what God has given me, recognized its, its potential and what it's meant for, and give that back to him and give that back to, the least of these.
Oh, for sure. As for me, I'm an athlete. So what
Hmm.
I love to do is when I'm on the runway before a jump, I do a little prayer before my first one, not before every one. But I don't know if you ever watched The Patriot before.
Yeah, I've seen some
So
bits.
whenever he's in the woods and he's about to take on the caravan that
Hmm.
like has his son, he says, "Lord, help me be fast and accurate." And I just say that
Mm.
because you had to be accurate on the board. You need to
Yeah.
be fast. Everything has to be really dialed in.
Right.
And I pray that, and then I do the little like kiss my finger, point
Yeah.
up into the air, saying like all the glory to Him, and then I go jump,
Hmm.
and makes a big difference. I had a fantastic day at conference
Yeah.
a couple weeks ago, and or I guess it was last Saturday, but I had a great week, and kids from a different school are like, "Dude, what are you taking?" I said, "I'm praying to the Lord." I said, "I'm praying to Jesus." I said, "It's all Him, man. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not doing anything." And they said, "Well, which God are you praying to?" And I was like, "Yahweh. That's my God."
The God.
Yeah. I'm like, "Well, I gotta start praying to Yahweh if I'm trying to jump like that." And it just makes a big difference because I met
Yeah.
them on their level. Like I understood, like we were able to um, like get together over a sport that we all
Right.
love and we all love to participate in. So
Yeah.
whether your thing is music, whether it's athletics, whether it's poetry,
Hmm.
like whatever the you're at a
Slam poetry.
club, yeah, you're at a club, rap battles,
Yeah.
whatever it is, whatever your thing is, book club, bridge, like
Hmm.
playing poker. That's another one evangelism opportunity. But
Hmm.
um, yeah,
I heard a pastor talking about he had a funny idea for a Christian gambling app called Casting Lots.
that's good. I
Uh,
like that.
anyway, yeah, going back to it, all these different ways that we can, evangelize. We've talked about how do I, as a person, an individual, evangelize in a friendly, healthy way. How, as a churchgoer, do I help in church? How, as a church community, do we help those? And how outside of church and all of that, because the other different groups we're in. And so there's a lot of great ways that we can evangelize, and then also recognizing the importance of when God tells you to do something. Like one thing my mom told me is like sometimes God tells you to do something that you maybe don't want to do, or you don't think will be prosperous. People uh giving to somebody on the sidewalk who is asking for money. Sometimes you think, oh well, they're just going to go and use it on drugs, or waste it on alcohol or whatever. We can make that assumption, but sometimes if you get that tug of just like, I need to give money to this person, That's what you do. You do what God leads you to do, and then you give the rest to him because you were obedient to his will. And it's hard sometimes because we can follow his will for something. We can do something that he tells us to do, but other people outside of that can negatively affect that. But that should not be any more repellent to not do God's will despite, what other people might do with that. We do our part and we give it to God. We say, "All right, God, this doesn't make sense. I'm going to follow you though. I'm going to talk to this person. I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to give this money. It may not make sense to other people, but I'm trusting you and I'm going to give it to you."
You're right. And I think on top of that and going off of that, we have to make sure not just that we are more careful about casting our pearls before swine, but that we are not swine ourselves.
Right. I was reading in John the other day. He had healed a blind man, and he was like, "I've come here to heal the blind." And I know you've talked about it before. Sometimes you need to be blind to
John
see.
9.
Yeah, yeah. John 9. It was right in there. And he's like, and but some of you are guilty because you are blind and you claim that you can see.
Ooh,
And that one I really love because sometimes it's like, flipping around to the scripture that we've been using, sometimes you think you're throwing pearls, but really you're just hucking garbage.
of course.
And so it's also part of it is self-awareness and accountability with others. And as we talked earlier about, spiritual maturity and soundness of recognizing what you have, because what we have is the greatest thing in the world. We have Jesus, and recognizing that this is not, a simple small thing. Like this is a big deal. We have the saving grace in our hearts and in our lives, and treating that with more worth than our phones, like a Lamborghini, or a $10,000 gold bar or whatever. Like it is priceless. And so we have to handle it with care, because the way that we use it, it can either turn into a pearl or it can stay stuck up in a deformed, disfigured rock that just comes out of a clam.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think that pearls refer to anything that you hold of value.
Yeah.
And, like we kind of hit on this whenever we said, like, be loving, treat
Mhm.
everybody the same, be a good stand up, objectively good, moral human being. I guess that's all kind of
Yeah.
redundant, but like, um, what's the point of naysaying?
Yeah.
A lot of people will naysay just to naysay. And before you know it, like if you have a bad attitude regarding somebody's story that they're putting out, and it could
Mhm.
be anything that holds value to them. They could be
Right.
telling a funny story that happened, like the story about them and their grandma. And
Yeah.
they could be going around telling everybody about it. And it's pure and like it could be funny, but you've
Yeah.
heard it 460 times. So now you're like, dude, give it a rest. And he is like, well, it's a story of like me and my grandma. You know what I mean? And, like,
Yeah.
to him, that's a pearl, like, that's a
That's
precious
yeah.
memory, and then, like, you're sitting there not getting it.
Right.
So, I think, like, in that analogy, it's important to understand the distinguishment of the fact that, like, you can be swine,
Mhm.
and I can be swine, and, like I said, you can be swine. Sorry,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Sorry, but you can be.
Yeah, I know.
I can be too.
My papa used to tell me, pigs, swine, chew like a horse and not like a pig, because
Mm,
horses, they chew with their mouths closed and they clean when they talk. Kind of. He had a lot of. He grew up a farmer, so
yeah.
many of his analogies were farm based. Anyway, but yeah, and I think that's where it's important to have accountability with that. Like I said, I think it's so important, accountability, like what we have here. I've got accountability with a couple friends back home where, we check up on each other. And I don't know if you've ever, about the Wesley accountability questions.
Mm,
It's really great stuff, but they're super deep. John Wesley and their, I don't know, their crew, when they would meet regularly, they had all these questions that they would go through, and like some of the stuff of like, do you wish for all of us to tell you anything that we are concerned about regarding you that the Lord has laid upon our hearts. When was the last time you sinned? When was the last time this? But there are all these really great things. But anyway, just caveat, the idea of accountability in community and with each other can help make us better evangelizers. I mean, there were 12 disciples, not one.
Yeah.
There was many, and they were all, I'm assuming roughly in similar ages and stuff, but just the idea of that they were going through it together, and through that, they made some mistakes, but they had accountability and be like, no, this is actually how it needs to be. But all of that to say, healthy evangelism. There's a lot of ways that we can go about it. There's a lot of ways we can not go about it. But yeah, recognizing what we have is precious. We got pearls, so gotta treat them as such.
Yeah. And I think it's important not to be complacent. You
Hmm.
know, if we are the body, I'll say it again. There's a song I always quote: if we are
Yeah,
the body by casting crowns, his arms need to reach,
yeah,
his words need to teach,
yeah,
his hands need to heal, and so
yeah.
on. So, uh, yeah,
Makes me again think about the parable of the three servants that were given money,
yeah,
and basically, don't go bury it in the ground. Don't hold that in. Don't hold this pearl all to yourself. It's not going to do anything.
that's true.
Sitting in the dirt. Supposed to go out with it and then bring back more. Take what God has given me as one person, go out and grab two more hands.
Yeah, just because you're not supposed to cast your pearls before swine doesn't mean you're not supposed to cast your pearls.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes you're going to cast a pearl and it's not going to hit. Sometimes you are. And that one time it is, all of heaven is rejoicing.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Pokemon
Yeah.
in a weird way. Anyway,
So anyway, that's
yeah,
a great part to close. So again, this has been really awesome. There've been a couple cuts. We'll see how it looks outside of it, but I think this is gonna be a really great way for us to connect more with you and for you guys to connect more with us. It's weird. I gotta look at the camera now.
yeah.
Uh,
Keeps us on our toes too,
yeah,
because I can't make weird facial
yeah.
expressions or like move around, or maybe I can, like I'll have a trademark or something.
Anyway, hopefully you guys are following the Instagram because I made a post updating about all of the different things with YouTube. We are now also on TikTok, and there's going to be a lot more short form content where you can see video snippets of us talking. The same kind of little things been posting on Instagram, but hoping to get more of that. But you can follow us at Theo_thoughts.podcast. That's the same for Instagram and TikTok. Follow us on YouTube. Just search up Theo Thoughts, no spaces. Theo Thoughts.
Mm,
Just like this. Theo Thoughts.
yep.
Anyway, subscribe. That felt weird to say.
Yeah.
Subscribe.
Don't forget to like and subscribe, guys,
Uh
and comment too,
Yeah.
please.
Anyway, yeah, we want to hear more from you guys. We want to hear what you like, what maybe you want us to do, a different topic. We want to hear from you guys, but there's a lot of ways to connect with, but the best way, Instagram, link in the bio, you can access everything. Of course, you can still listen on Spotify and Apple, and Monday nights 7 p.m. Central on WGRN 89.5 Greenville University Radio. Anyway, I'm Judson Page.
I'm Jordan Peter now. Love
God,
y'all.
God
God
bless.
bless.